How's it going, everybody?
Welcome.
Welcome to the a special edition of the Cover 2 podcast. We do this every single year. This time for the first time at a different location, even a different location than we normally record. That's not by design. It was just the lighting was not working with us, so it works out right here. But nonetheless, we're going to get into this. This is the NFL prediction special. We're going to go through every single division, every conference. We're going to split this in two, so you're either going to be watching the AFC predictions or the NFC predictions whenever they are released. You will obviously be watching them, and we're going to go kind of a scope over every single division. We're not going to go team by team. It's going to take too long. We know you don't necessarily need that either. So we're going to give our opinions on maybe some surprise teams in each division. I'm sure we'll disagree on division winners.
We will have a lot of disagreement.
Yeah, because we always do, of course.
That's a given.
100%. So let's get started. We're going to start with the NFC East. Obviously, we see Jared is wearing his Dallas Cowboys shirt, the America's team.
Of course.
So we want to start with his division. We would have started with the Cardinals, but they were the worst team in the league, so I don't think that's fair to do. But starting with the NFC East, Jared, this is a two-horse race, in my opinion, between the Philadelphia Eagles and Dallas Cowboys. Both rosters loaded with talent. And then you have the Redskins and Giants, who I think will be more competitive than they were last year. I just don't think they're up to the standard of the Cowboys and Eagles.
So I already disagree with Nick. I don't believe that the Redskins or the Giants will be as competitive. Quickly on the Giants, yes, they drafted Daniel Jones, number 6 overall, to be the eventual replacement of Eli Manning. Eli Manning will still at least start the year as the starting quarterback for the Giants. But here's my issue with them. The Giants, yes, they have Saquon Barkley. Yes, they have Evan Ingram. As of right now, those are their only two offensive weapons, in my opinion. Golden Tate is going to be suspended for the first 4 games by the NFL, so he will not be there the first 4 games. Sterling Shepard, I believe he has a hand injury, and it's iffy whether or not he's going to be ready for at least week 1 when they play the Cowboys in Arlington, Texas. So they might not even have him as their actually go-to receiver. And Corey Coleman, who's going to be their 3rd receiver, tore his ACL, so he's out for the year. So essentially, when the Giants line up week 1 at Dallas, they will be without their top 3 receiving threats. And we don't really know when those players will be coming back. So the fact that teams are going to be able to just hone in on Saquon Barkley and stack the box and say, Eli Manning, we're forcing you to make throws, I just don't think that's a recipe for success in the long run for the Giants. As far as the Redskins go, I think they're going to be the same old Redskins. They came out and announced earlier this week that Case Keenum is going to be their starter. They drafted Dwayne Haskins with the 15th overall pick out of Ohio State. And even though I think that he's looked better than Keenum is more experienced, and I think Jay Gruden wants to go with that experience early on. The Redskins as a whole, I just don't think that team has the talent, nor are they built to compete with the Cowboys or the Eagles. So from that standpoint, I agree with you. I don't think those two teams will be competitive. I just don't think they're going to be competitive at all. I think if somehow they're able to get to 8-8 at 500, I think that's a blessing for them. I think they're looking more at 6 wins, something along those lines. So really, I think this is a 2-team race, like you mentioned, to start this off with the Dallas Cowboys and the Philadelphia Eagles. I'll go with the Eagles first. Listen, the Eagles are loaded, and they get Carson Wentz back. They signed him to a mega extension. I believe it was $128 million. But here's the problem. Carson Wentz has not shown his durability, nor the fact that he has not played a full 16-game regular season since he's been in the NFL. And the fact that they don't have their backup in Nick Foles anymore, if Carson Wentz goes down, I think this whole Eagles team goes down. And I'm not saying he will, and I don't wish that upon him, but they don't have that security blanket anymore. So if Carson Wentz stays healthy, they've got a plethora of receivers and running backs. Their defense is still very solid, and they are a Super Bowl contending team. So if healthy, the Eagles are going to be very, very formidable. I'm just not so sure that through a 16-game season, Carson Wentz and his back can stay healthy.
I think that is the absolutely biggest thing for the Eagles. I think everything else you could lose a player from every element of the football field, and it probably wouldn't affect the team that much. Besides Carson Wentz, you lose Carson Wentz, you're probably not a playoff team. I mean, you could have all the talent in the world. You have a bad quarterback, it just does not happen for you. So I agree with you on that. Carson Wentz is the key to the Eagles. Their backup quarterback now is Nate Sudfeld. He's not even healthy right now either.
Which is why they just signed Josh McCown, who was actually working for ESPN as an analyst. Yes. And they brought him off the couch.
Yeah, no, so that's what I'm saying. You have a bunch of random guys at backup quarterback. It's not like Nick Foles a couple of years ago. It's not like some other teams in the past where they've had quarterbacks go down and you have a guy kind of replace them. They've now joined most of NFL teams with, here's your guy. Let's, look what just happened with the Colts, right? They lose their guy. And then all of a sudden, everyone's saying, they're not a playoff team, all that stuff. So that would happen with the Eagles as well. They have so much talent at running back. I think they might have the best running back talent in all football. The wide receiving core got better.
They get Deshaun Jackson back.
100%.
Right, his second go-around.
J.J. Arcega-Whiteside is a draft pick. The defense is still very good. A lot of kind of knick-knack injuries on their defense right now, but they'll be fine for the rest of the season. Like I said, the key is Carson Wentz. Moving on to the Cowboys now. Cowboys, we've already kind of said it, so we won't expand too much on the Cowboys right now.
That's okay. We can expand on it. We can talk about Cowboys all day long.
Of course we could. But you look at the Cowboys, they also, in a lot of ways, are backed by one guy, and that is Ezekiel Elliott. And he's kind of the glue to them being a legitimate Super Bowl contender. I think without Ezekiel Elliott, they still can make the playoffs, but to be a Super Bowl contender and potentially to win this division, they need Ezekiel Elliott. Do you have anything else that's to say? Like, do you have any other people that you think are equally as important, besides obviously Dak Prescott being quarterback? Do you think the Cowboys have a chance to beat the Eagles in this division without Zeke? And try to put the bias aside, obviously.
No, they don't. They really don't. And I think that's the main reason why, to this day, Monday, August 26th, Ezekiel Elliott is still holding out. I believe it's his 30th or 31st day of holdout. He has not been in training camp at all. He's been back and forth training in Cabo, and I believe he's currently back in Texas right now. But Ezekiel Elliott is basically saying, I know my worth. No one has more carries, more touches since Ezekiel has been in the league. And he's led the league the last 2 out of 3 years of rushing. So he's basically saying, I want to get paid as the top running back in the NFL. And he knows without him on the field, yes, the Cowboys can win some games, and their defense is very formidable. Dak Prescott is a good quarterback. He's not great. He's not superior. He's not elite, but he is a good quarterback. He can make things happen. But without Ezekiel Elliott, he really is the mainstay. And with him, you cannot stack the box. You cannot just force Dak Prescott to throw the ball. There are so many other options and things that you can do with Ezekiel Elliott. So I think he will be there, whether it's week 1 or week 2. I think they will eventually get it dealed up. But no, to answer your question, without Ezekiel Elliott, the Cowboys do not make the playoffs.
No, the Cowboys won the division last year, so they're going to have that first place schedule playing as well. So not as easy as some of the other teams in this division as far as your schedule as well.
Right.
So
they play the Patriots, the Saints, the Rams.
And so the more you miss Ezekiel Elliott, the less chance to kind of win those earlier games before you play the Saints, before you play the Patriots, before you play the Rams. Because those teams will take advantage of that major flaw. Maybe the Giants won't, maybe the Redskins won't, but sure as hell, we know the Patriots will, and the Rams and Saints, like you mentioned, could equally do that. And even a team like the Eagles, I think, could do it with the Carson Wentz. So, now, saying that, and having believed Ezekiel Elliott will be back, I'm going to wait till he gets paid. I don't think he's coming back until they pay him, and for what it's shown so far, they're willing to pay Jalen Smith, but it's kind of been a little bit more back and forth, a little bit more testy with Ezekiel Elliott in the front office. So I don't know. There's a chance Ezekiel Elliott might not play this season after what we saw with Le'Veon Bell, and now what we saw with Andrew Luck retiring as well. I think a lot of these guys are understanding, hey, if I'm not treated right, I don't have to play this game. I can I made enough money right now. I can do all this stuff. I can wait out. And in running back's case, with Le'Veon Bell doing the thing last year, Zeke could miss. Saying that again, I didn't even need to add that, and I probably should cut all that out. But nonetheless, I am going to go with the Philadelphia Eagles winning this division, just because I think Zeke is potentially going to miss the whole season, miss a bunch of games. The Eagles will take advantage of that. I don't think Carson Wentz gets hurt this year. So I got the Eagles winning the division. I'm not going to do a win total because I haven't looked at the whole entire schedule and kind of mapped it out and stuff. But I do believe the Eagles will win the NFC East.
The Dallas Cowboys will win the NFC East. And Ezekiel Elliott will be with this team by week 2.
Okay.
I'm a little iffy. A couple weeks ago I would have said he was definitely going to be in before week 1 against the New York Giants, but I believe that he will be there by week 2 for sure. Here's my thing. I think this team with Ezekiel Elliott is just complete. They are so young and quick and fast on defense that this Cowboys team and Dak Prescott, they don't have to go out and score 30 points a game. Now, it would be very nice if they did.
You win a lot of games.
Right, but this defense, I think, will be able to hold opponents to, around 14, 15 points a game, and I think that will be enough for the Cowboys to get, double-digit wins at minimum. I really am just not sold until I see it happen that Carson Wentz can, stay healthy for a full 16-game season. And with his back injury, and trust me, when you get to about week 10, week 11, depending on what their bye is, I guarantee you his back is going to start flaring up. And at some point, I think he's going to miss some games. I think that is really going to hurt the Eagles. And for those 2 reasons, I say that the Cowboys win the division. I can very easily see the Eagles making it as a wild card team. Just like you said, I don't want to sit here and give an actual, 10 wins, 11 wins. I think the Eagles make it as one of the wild card teams, and the Cowboys come out of the NFC East as division champs.
And that's why I'm not going to even say wild card teams again, because I'm not doing the schedule, but I do believe if I had to put a bet on it, Cowboys and Eagles are going to make the playoffs this year. I'm not saying that as gospel, but I do believe, obviously I believe the Eagles are going to win the division. I think the Cowboys do have enough talent overall to make a run at the playoffs. All right, moving on to the NFC North. Jared, this is a good division of football teams. All 4 teams are competitive. Okay, I'm interested to see, because I think we'll disagree on this one, because I think you have a lot of talent. Some of these teams have improved. They've changed coaches, stuff like that. I do believe there is a top team in this division, but I do believe every single team will take a bite out of each other here. I could see this being one of those times where it's every team is 1-1 versus each other in this division. So I'll give my thoughts on it first. Now, I'll gladly let you disagree with me on this. That top team I was talking about is the Chicago Bears. Their defense is ridiculous. Their offense was much improved last year. Mitch Trubisky, another year here in the NFL. If you followed us last year, you know that I wasn't very high on Mitch Trubisky in big games. So another year under his belt, having played in those big games does help him. Getting used to the Chicago weather in the winter and all that stuff. How else do you to go to North Carolina? And the weather's not as it's a little better than Chicago in November, and December, and January, and all that. Better. Yeah. So I do think this top team is the Bears, and I'm going to state that right now. The Vikings are good, but I just think Trubisky in the offense and the defense overall for the Bears is better than the Minnesota Vikings. Having said that, Minnesota Vikings, I think, are the second best team in this division, and they are very good. And much like I said earlier with the Cowboys and Eagles, I could see both those teams making a run at the playoffs, but I'm not going to say that right now. And then the Detroit Lions and Green Bay Packers. I want to kind of talk about them more, because I think a lot of people know about the Vikings. We obviously the two popular quarterbacks with the Vikings and Bears. We all know the defenses are amazing, the offenses are good enough, but I do want to talk about more the Lions and Packers. Green Bay, they got rid of Mike McCarthy. I think that's going to take a lot off the shoulders of a lot of the players on this team. I just think it was kind of the same voice over and over again. Not much improvement was happening year in, year out. They have their new head coach, LaFleur, I believe it is. Is it that?
Matt LaFleur.
Matt LaFleur. Torn Achilles and all, will be head coaching this team. So I think Aaron Rodgers is going to have a good year this year. We know he's another guy that gets hurt a lot. But I just think new coach, different system. Teams won't be ready for Aaron Rodgers in certain situations because there's going to be a new playbook, which I think is dangerous for the rest of the NFL. And that's why I'm saying I think the Packers are competitive. On paper, the roster isn't great, But I just think that with a new coach, a new scheme, Aaron Rodgers staying healthy, the Packers are a good team, and they will take a bite at a lot of good teams this season. And then looking at the Lions are improved as well. And it's Matt Patricia's second year under the belt. He got the jitters out, didn't have a good year this year. I'm going to pull up their roster really quick before I say anything that might be incorrect about them.
Blasphemous.
Well, I'm just saying. No, but so I think that they add a tight end in the NFL draft. Kenny Galladay.
What's his name?
T.J. Hawkins.
Oh, okay. All right. He's a tight end. Right?
Just saying.
All right.
But no, so you have Kenny Galladay, another year. I think he's going to turn into a top wide receiver. Kerryon Johnson gets his first time running the football. You obviously have Matt Stafford. Never really been over the hump, but he's getting more used to the system. The real thing with the Lions, though, I can talk about the offense, is their defense. I think they have a very solid defense. Trey Flowers, Damon Harrison, Devon Kennard, Darius Slay. These are the type of guys that are leading this defense. I think this defense is much improved than it has been over the last some years. I think that's the biggest thing with the Lions. Another reason why they're going to take a chunk out of some teams in the division. But I do believe it's the Vikings and Bears at the top. Packers and Lions, though, more competitive than the Giants and the Redskins in the NFC East.
That was really cute. That was really nice. And you're such a nice guy. You're tough. You don't really want to say
just
too
wait
many
till I
bad
talk
things
about the NFC West.
Right? Okay. All right. That's because you're a Cardinals fan
Of course.
and you dislike the other three
Well, you
teams.
did it with the NFC East, so
I did. Touche. This is not that hard for me. The Chicago Bears will win this division.
I agree with you on that.
No,
Yes.
and I do agree with you.
Yeah.
Mitchell Trubisky, another year in this offense with Matt Nagy. The defense is lights out. It starts with Khalil Mack. You've got Eddie Jackson, that safety out of Alabama who has shined since he's come into the league as a late round draft pick. I think the defense as a whole will carry them. And much like I think they're very similar to the Cowboys. They're very young on both sides of the ball. They will be, defensive minded, and the offense won't necessarily have to score as many points because the defense is going to keep their opponents under 14, 15 points a game, which will make things a lot easier for their offense. And in saying that, I think the Chicago Bears are the only team. They win the division. They are the only team that actually makes the playoffs in this division. I'm not very excited about what I've seen from Kirk Cousins so far in this preseason. And I know it's preseason, so pump the brakes. But overall, throughout Kirk Cousins' career, he has not shown me that he is worth that full guaranteed contract that he deserves.
Of course not. Yeah,
I'm sorry, but listen, Dalvin Cook, I hope he can stay healthy. He had a huge 88-yard run in their preseason game against the Cardinals a couple days ago, and he looks like he's full go.
He looked amazing.
Finally, because the first 2 years that he's been in the NFL, he has been banged up multiple times. So if he can stay healthy, that is huge. You've got Stephon Diggs and Adam Thielen on the outside. So I think they can make some noise. I just really do not trust Kirk Cousins. So unfortunately, because of Kirk Cousins, I think he is hindering this Minnesota Vikings team from making the playoffs and really getting
so you're
just
saying
over that.
you actually don't think they'll make the playoffs?
No, I don't. The Chicago Bears are the only team in this division that will make the playoffs. The Packers, Aaron Rodgers, yes. If he can stay healthy, he can basically do just about anything. I think he is the best quarterback, the best talented quarterback in the NFL. Here's the thing, though. I'm just not sold on this whole quarterback with new head coach Matt LaFleur.
So we actually differ. So I actually think this will help him because he had the same voice. He wasn't really good at friends with Mike McCarthy near the end. That's why I think he's, hey, this is a new guy, right? I'll listen to this guy. I like this guy already. Like, the guy's playing basketball. He's tearing his Achilles.
Listen,
all that stuff.
Matt LaFleur has never been a head coach before. He comes from Tennessee as an offensive coordinator. And last time I checked, Tennessee's offense wasn't blowing people out. Okay, so from that standpoint, I don't have huge expectations for Matt LaFleur in the offense. I have high expectations for Aaron Rodgers to take the offense to another level. I'm just not so sure that those two are going to be able to gel like some people think. They did add some good additions on defense, but I think in this division with the Bears, I just don't see this Packers team really getting too far. And with the Lions, this one's going to be very, very simple. Matt Stafford, he is a regular season quarterback. In the regular season, he will throw for 5,000 yards. He will look like an MVP candidate. And then when it gets towards the end of the year, when you need him to win some games and you need this Lions team to win games, I don't think they will do it. I do like the addition of Trey Flowers. They bring in Snacks Harrison, to kind of shore up that defensive line. And I think they brought in some good additions, some former Patriots, and that Matt Patricia will be able to use. But unfortunately, I don't think this team has enough talent. So really, it's kind of very simple. The Chicago Bears will win the division. Not saying they'll do it easily. They will have some hardships. But the Chicago Bears win this division, and they are the only team that makes the playoffs out of the NFC North.
I also believe the Bears won the division. I'm giving the Vikings a chance because I think their defense is good enough to possibly steal some games here and there. I don't believe the Packers and Lions will make the playoffs. I would not be shocked if they do. And that's why I had to mention all 4 teams. I'll tell you this, though. Detroit Lions, here's the beginning of their season, right? They start with the Cardinals, okay, at Arizona. The only thing, obviously, I'm not going to try to be biased, but the Cardinals are going to show the Lions something that nobody's ever seen before in the NFL.
True.
So that's difficult. The rest of this is more legitimate. The next game, Los Angeles Chargers. The next game, at Philadelphia. The next game, Kansas City.
Ooh.
So there's a potential they start 0-4. So that's why. But I just think then they play. Then they start playing their own division. They play the Giants. They play the Raiders. Washington, Tampa Bay, Denver. There's a lot of easier games down the road. So that's what I'm saying. I would be surprised if they do make the playoffs. Only because their schedule is so hard in the beginning. But if they can get to the beginning of the thing, I think there's a chance. And there is Matt Stafford, of course, who I agree with you, does not show the qualities of a big game quarterback, much like Mitch Trubisky did last year, much like Jared Goff has in the past with me. But improved defense, their offensive weapons are a bit better now. Matt Patricia in his second year, I would not be surprised if they're competitive as well. And if they would sneak into the playoffs with a 9-7 record, 8-8 record, I would not be surprised. All right, moving on to the NFC South. It's another interesting division here. You obviously have Bruce Arians back with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. You have the Panthers, who are dealing with Cam Newton and injuries. The Falcons, who are always dangerous. And, of course, the bell cow of the NFC South every year, the New Orleans Saints. Jared, I'll let you take it away to start this. Your thoughts on the NFC South?
This is actually one of the tougher divisions for me to scout and try to put in order as far as who's going to win the division and so forth. I think as of right now, the Saints clearly have the upper hand, listing Drew Brees, no doubt Hall of Famer. What he does for this offense is unlike almost any other quarterback, and the fact that he does it at his height, and he's not that tall, the fact that what he does is simply amazing. So they signed Michael Thomas. He is now the highest paid receiver in NFL history. They do lose Mark Ingram, but they replace him with Latavius Murray, and I think that they will be just fine with Latavius Murray and Alvin Kamara in that backfield. So the Saints offense is going to continue to roll. Their defense, I think, is in the same scheme for multiple years, which they hadn't been able to say for a little while. So, I think they're getting more comfortable with that scheme, and I think the Saints will once again win this division, but not without a fight. The Carolina Panthers and the Atlanta Falcons, I think, are 2 teams that will position themselves for potential wild card spots. Let's start with the Atlanta Falcons. You got, obviously, Matt Ryan, just a consistent quarterback, right? Every single year. He led them to the Super Bowl a couple years ago, but he's got Julio Jones. He's got Calvin Ridley. He's got Mohamed Sanu. You've got, obviously, Devontae Freeman. And the question I have for them offensively, right, is their offensive line. Can they give Matt Ryan enough time and keep him upright to make those throws to the plethora of weapons that they have? The defense, they get some huge additions back. They get Deion Jones, who was out all of last year. Keanu Neal is back healthy. Desmond Trufant is back healthy. So the cornerstones of that Atlanta Falcons defense are all back. And I think that's one of the reasons why I think they will be in the running for a wild card spot. The Carolina Panthers are another team who I'm excited about. If Cam Newton can stay healthy, and kind of get back to his ways. The second year that he's in the same system with Norv Turner, obviously you've got Christian McCaffrey, you have DJ Moore, who's the speedster. They lose Devin Funchess, who's kind of that in-between type of security blanket receiver, bigger body receiver for Cam Newton. And because Cam isn't necessarily as accurate, Devin Funchess was a big body he can throw to, so they lose a guy in that aspect. But what you do know about this Carolina Panthers team is that they will always come and play solid, hard defense.
Yeah,
and so, for that reason as well, I think them and the Falcons will be right there neck and neck for wild card spots. Unfortunately for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, it's a lot of rebuilding going on.
Yeah.
I do like Bruce Arians, and I know that he will have his team ready. I just don't think they're talented enough. I'm not sold on Jameis Winston. You lose Deshaun Jackson. It's basically Mike Evans, and you have a committee at running back. The defense, the defense is kind of other than their linebacking core, you lose Gerald McCoy. You bring in Ndamukong Suh, so that's kind of a trade-off right there. But I'm really not sold on this Tampa Bay Buccaneers team at all. So I think it's the Saints, and then I think you've got the Panthers and the Falcons who are jockeying for a wild card spot.
I actually agree with a lot of what you just said right there. You just talk about Tampa Bay really quickly because I don't think they're going to make the playoffs. I think you're right. If you're a Tampa Bay Buccaneers fan, this year could be a very fun year. They could potentially get up to 7 wins because of Bruce Arians' style of offense. The Cardinals had good defenses with Arians, but I think the offense taking care of the ball nicely when the Cardinals were on. There's a couple of year runs where they were making playoffs every year, or at least competitive. The offense was taking care of the ball. They'd have occasional 3 and outs, but a lot of times drives were taken. They would be a lot of first downs because it was a kind of a running gun type of offense. But here's the biggest thing for them: you're really going to find out with the quarterback guru himself, Bruce Arians, who's coached Andrew Luck, Ben Roethlisberger. I'm going to forget a couple guys, so I'm going to stop right there. That's already enough. There's a lot of other guys. Look up who he took Carson Palmer as well. Rejuvenated Carson Palmer's career in Arizona. If Jameis Winston can't be a franchise quarterback under Bruce Arians, that's where fans, I think, are going to have to be, oh my God.
Like, this is Jameis Winston's last year.
No, that's what I'm saying. He now has been given every possible chance with Bruce Arians to be successful. And if he screws it up, Tampa Bay is going to be in for one of those really bad rebuilds.
They will be in the running for Tua next year.
Oh, yeah. No, I know. And it's almost like at some point you almost want to pull Winston at some point to try to get some of those losses stacked up, stuff like that. But you could always trade as well. Not about Tampa Bay Buccaneers, though. And I'm bitter because he took the whole old Cardinal staff with him as well. So, but we agree. I like your analysis of the Panthers and Falcons. I think the Falcons are a very solid team. Their defense, it's been better for sure. But I think their offense is so good that this team will get some wins.
It covers up some holes for
100%. And their schedule is a bit easier than New Orleans, so they could steal some wins there. I do want to talk about the Panthers, though, because they'll play solid defense, but the defense is getting a bit older. Their offense is getting younger, but their quarterback is oft injured. This team is solely Cam Newton or bust. I mean, if Cam Newton doesn't play and gets hurt again a couple times, or his shoulder flares up again, they're going to be in a similar situation as Tampa Bay, where you're really going to have to decide who your franchise quarterback is. Maybe they want to go in the running. Maybe they want to trade up for a quarterback. This is Cam Newton, in my opinion, his last year as well to prove. I know he won the MVP, but his shoulder is messed up, and it's fresh on our minds. Because not only did we just record a podcast about it, but it just happened with Andrew Luck's continued injuries. I think Cam Newton might be thinking the same thing. He's like, is this really worth it? Is it worth it for me to try to take these concussions and take all these shoulder injuries to keep remaining an NFL quarterback of a team that is not necessarily improving, is getting a bit older? So the Panthers could be great. We saw last year, they were one of the best teams in the NFL for the first 8 games. And then they were one of the worst teams in the NFL for the rest of the season. Very true. And a lot of times with the Panthers' schedule, they get chipped at the end of the season with New Orleans. They usually play New Orleans the last 5 games. so they can win a lot of games in the beginning and then they get a bunch of losses. Same with the Falcons. I think one thing that will help them is they're playing a third place schedule, so they'll have a little bit of easier route. But the Panthers rely solely on Cam Newton, 100% Cam Newton, a lot like a Packers or a couple other teams in the NFL. It's quarterback or bust with them, and even after that, I think you have to really think about if Cam Newton is a franchise guy. But the best team in this division is the New Orleans Saints.
No doubt.
I do think they will win the division. They have an extremely tough schedule this year. But when you have Drew Brees and you have Sean Payton and you have Michael Thomas and all these other players, it doesn't matter. They can win any game they want. They're not going to go 16-0, but they will. They will make the playoffs. I do believe they will win the division because I think they'll take games away from the Panthers and Falcons, and that's what will get them over the hump. I could see the Falcons and Panthers making the playoffs as well. They're competitive. Tampa Bay, no chance. But New Orleans Saints are the best team in this division.
True. I agree.
All right, moving on to the NFC West. Jared, this is personally my favorite division in the
I wonder
NFL.
why.
I wonder why. It's not like I'm wearing the hat or the sweatshirt of the team I like, but I went a little step further with you with the hat today.
You did. You did.
No, my hair wasn't looking the best today, so I was like, I'll wear the hat. So,
Gotta fix it.
of course. NFC West. This is a very interesting division in the bottom three. Obviously, the best team in this division is the Los Angeles Rams. I don't think anybody's going to argue that. I actually think that by a long shot they are. But if you're looking at the rest of this division, you have the Cardinals, who are going to be a very random team. Like, the Cardinals could end up 4-12. They also could potentially end up 8-8, with just the style of offense. Nobody's ever seen it. Nobody knows how. We've seen Kyler Murray types. There's Russell Wilson. There's Patrick Mahomes. But he's just different. If you've watched some of the preseason games for the Cardinals, he's able to get out of everything and still gain 5 yards because of his speed. His accuracy is incredible. The accuracy in a preseason game, you can't teach that. Okay, that's something where you can see above the line of preseason talent that this guy is. I'm not going to say he's legit yet, but he has the chance, without injuries hindering him, to be an NFL star. This year, though, I don't know. So I'm not going to sit here and say the Cardinals are going to make the playoffs or anything like that.
Please don't.
But I think the Cardinals could surprise a bunch of teams and win a bunch of games this year. I do think they'll have a better record than they did last year. Not hard to say since they were 3-13. But the Cardinals will be interesting. Defense is not very good, but the offense could give you wins. Seattle Seahawks still have Russell Wilson, and their defense is still solid. They still have Bobby Wagner leading the charge. They always seem to have a pretty solid defense. Their offense is definitely hindered this year. They lose Doug Baldwin. Their offensive line is kind of sketchy. Now, yeah, exactly. So the Seahawks, you have Russell Wilson, you have Pete Carroll, you have a good defense. They're going to win some games as well. And then moving on to the 49ers, we've talked about this a lot. I don't want to keep harping on it, but Jimmy G, that's kind of like the whole thing there. And he has not proven himself to stay healthy so far in the NFL. He has all the talent in the world. You look at his makeup. You look at how quick his arm is. They're giving him talent now, and this 49ers roster is finally starting to look like an NFL roster now. A couple of years ago, it was awful. Looked like a college all-star roster, to be honest. But, they have their quarterback. They have a lot of things in place. But, again, it's kind of Jimmy G or bust. So I think the Rams, I'm not going to say much about the Rams. We know they're probably going to win the division. Super Bowl, I don't know. I think it's hard for me to say that Jared Goff can lead a team to the Super Bowl. The defense is still great, but it's not as good as last year. I think that was the team that should have won the Super Bowl. I still think if they would have made adjustments at halftime, they would have won the Super Bowl. They didn't. That was shocking. But I do think this team's absolutely a playoff team, 100%, and I think they're winning the NFC West. But it will be interesting to watch. I think all three of those teams could miss the playoffs. I could see the Seahawks making the playoffs and potentially the 49ers if Jimmy G plays out of his mind.
Yeah, this division is top heavy, and I mean that with one team. That is the Rams. And we don't need to talk about the Rams as much because we know how great they are. Here's the thing. Jared Goff is not a guy that will lead your team by himself, but guess what he has? Sean McVay. And Sean McVay is going to put his players in the right positions to make plays and create mismatches and make easy throws for Jared Goff to make him look great. He's a good quarterback. Sean McVay makes him a Pro Bowl quarterback. The defense, they added Eric Weddle, they added Clay Matthews, some veterans, guys who maybe aren't the players that they used to be, but smart, savvy guys. You know that they're not going to make mistakes, and you've still obviously got Aaron Donald. You've got Marcus Peters. So the defense will be fine, especially in this division. You're going to get at minimum 4 wins from playing these other division opponents. If you're the Rams, I think they actually fairly easily win this division. Next, moving on to the Seahawks, I think they're the second best team in this division. And unfortunately, because of some of the departures that you mentioned, especially with Doug Baldwin, they had such a great relationship, him and Russell Wilson, with the long ball and everything like that. I'm looking at the Seattle Seahawks wide receiver core right now, and they have David Moore, who's currently out, and Tyler Lockett, who are basically their top 2 receivers. They drafted DJ Metcalf in the second round, and we know how great, how big of a guy he is. DJ Metcalf's walking around with his shirt off, and he's got 8-pack abs and all this stuff. But is that going to translate to an NFL wide receiver and actually making plays? I'm not so sure. So I think this is one of those teams that you mentioned. It is really on the shoulders of Russell Wilson. On defense, obviously, you've got Bobby Wagner and KJ Wright. But in the secondary, I'm not really sold on this team. You bring Ezekiel Ansah.
Yeah, that's big.
In at defensive end, coming over from the Lions, but he's banked up as well, and so we'll see when he actually is able to get on the field. So unfortunately, I'm just not so sure that Russell Wilson will be able to lead this team for a 16-game season, having to play the Rams twice. I don't think that's going to be enough.
But if there is a quarterback that we've talked about that can do it, it is Russell.
No, it is Russell Wilson.
It's Russell
and I'm
Wilson.
not trying to say that I don't have confidence in him. I just feel like with the departures that this team has had and the lack of additions,
the offense is not very good.
I don't know if he can do it week in and week out for 16 games. Not even in this division, but just in the NFC in general. So for that reason, I think the Seahawks, who made the playoffs as the wild card team and lost to the Cowboys last year, I don't think they make the playoffs. As far as the other 2 teams, the 49ers and the Cardinals, I really think they are kind of neck and neck, kind of bringing up the rear. I'll start with the 49ers. It is kind of Jimmy G or bust, because the same thing offensively, they don't necessarily have many weapons. Yes, you have George Kittle, who is becoming one of the best tight ends in the NFL. The defense, I feel like every single year the 49ers just draft a defensive lineman in the first round. They have 4 or 5 first-round defensive linemen, and yet it just seems like their defense can't really bring it
Well, it
together.
also seems like when you play them, the Cardinals, there's some crazy statistic. Cardinals have beaten them for 7 straight years. Like the Cardinals are 14-0. Yeah, it's crazy. And it doesn't seem when you're watching that the defensive linemen they're not making a difference. Like you watch a Rams game or you watch a Bears game, you can tell, oh, their defensive line is really good. With the 49ers, yeah, they've been drafting all these defensive linemen. For some reason, when you watch them, it's just not impressive. So I don't know what goes on with that. And, their defense is better than it has been in a couple of years. But, yeah, I agree with you. It is kind of weird what's happened with their defensive line. You know what I'm saying?
Let's say here, Nick Bosa, first-round pick this year, right? DeForest Buckner, first-round pick a few years back. D. Ford, they traded, who was a former first-round pick of the Kansas City Chiefs. They traded for him. They signed Quan Alexander, the former linebacker of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. He was an early-round draft pick. You obviously have Solomon Thomas, who was a first-round draft pick as well. Eric Armstead was a first-round draft pick, right? So they have, you would think on paper they have so much talent in their front 7, but you just don't see it come together. Now, whether that's the scheme or I'm not sure why. Obviously, injuries have a huge say in that, but this 49ers team just does not be able to, they don't have the talent as a whole, especially with all the injuries that I just mentioned, for them to really bring it together. And the Arizona Cardinals, I mentioned this before, and I'm going to mention this again. I can see the Arizona Cardinals starting the season 3-1, potentially even 4-0. Right now, some people may look at me and think that I'm very crazy. I compare this Arizona Cardinals team to the Philadelphia Eagles of years ago when Chip Kelly took over in his first year, and they had Michael Vick. The entire NFL did not know what Chip Kelly was going to bring to the league, and because he had such an up-tempo pace, defenses were not ready for it. So the first 3-4 weeks of the season, they were blowing teams out, and they were making teams look like Pop Warner because they were not able to keep up with the schemes that the Eagles were doing. once NFL teams and NFL defenses were able to actually sit down and get film on the Eagles basically became non-existent, right? Now, obviously, there was more to do with that. Chip Kelly got rid of LaShawn McCoy and Deshaun Jackson, 2 superstars. And in the NFL, you need stars to win. So the Cardinals, I think it's the same thing. The first few weeks of the season, these teams aren't going to have the film to know exactly what this Cardinals team is going to throw out there on offense. So I think they're going to surprise a lot of teams. I think they're going to play up tempo. They were very vanilla in the preseason, but I think they're going to show some things that will be very, very different and successful. Once teams get film on the Cardinals and Kyler Murray specifically, I think that's when they're going to hit a huge wall, and I think you're going to see them decline. So, listen, they may go 3-1 or 4-0, but pump the brakes, because I think once teams get a feel for them, I think it's going to be a whole different story.
And an interesting thing, and we might have said this before, but just looking at their schedule as a whole, you're right. They obviously win the four games in a row. So besides New Orleans and Atlanta, they don't play crazy, amazing teams the first 11 games of the season. I'm not saying they're going to go 9-2. I'm not saying that at all. But what I am saying is this is where I was talking about earlier, where you could see maybe they're 8-8. Maybe they sneak 9-7 because they could win a bunch of games earlier in the season. The problem is, like you're saying, let's say they get a bunch of wins. Let's say after 11 games, they're somehow 7-4, right? The last 5 games of the season after their bye week, Rams, Pittsburgh, Cleveland, Seattle, LA again. So that's where the Cardinals.
Good luck.
The best case scenario for them is to go 9-2, because then you legitimately will have a chance to make the playoffs. But to say that is insane, because they were the worst team in the league. Now, we've seen a lot of worse in the first, right? We've seen this before, so I'm not going to say it can't happen. But obviously, bias aside, there's no way I'm going to say that this team is a playoff team, especially with the end of the season right there. Starting in December, it is brutal for the Cardinals, with 5 games that they more than likely should lose all 5. Looking at it on paper, so you get injuries, all that stuff, so we'll see. But
yeah, I think we can easily agree the Los Angeles Rams had this division locked down.
So in the NFC, did we agree on all the division winners actually?
We were very, very
no,
close.
just besides the Eagles and Cowboys, we believe the Bears, the Saints, and the Rams will win the divisions. We've said a couple playoff teams, but that's what we think is going to happen there. At the NFC, who do you think has the best chance to make it as the NFC representative in the Super Bowl?
Ooh, listen, I'm not saying this as a homer. I really think if Ezekiel Elliott can come back to a new contract, to go along with Dak Prescott and Amari Cooper, I think this Cowboys team, for how just young and fast and talented they are, I think they have a legitimate chance. The problem is there are a lot of teams like that in the NFC. I can make a case for the Chicago Bears. I can make a case for the Philadelphia Eagles if Carson Wentz stays healthy. I can make a case for the New Orleans Saints. I can make a case for the Los Angeles Rams. I can probably even put the Falcons in there. There are so many teams. I can't give you a straight answer right now. I would love to say the Cowboys, because I think they realistically have a legitimate shot. But as of right now, there are 4 or 5 teams that I think realistically can represent the NFC in the Super Bowl this year in Miami.
I didn't say the Cowboys are going to make division. I said that Ezekiel Elliott is the clue, but seeding matters. And I think if you have to go up against the Saints in the first round or second round or something like that, that's going to be difficult. My team, I just mentioned them, is the Saints. I think the Saints, they are the best bet to make the Super Bowl after what happened last year. It seems like they're going to go on one of those really good runs. They're going to have the most impressive season. We'll talk about the AFC in a second, or next week, if you're watching our NFC special right now. But I do think the Saints, I agree with you. There's a lot of talent here. You can make an argument for the Rams because they still have the talent. Bears, I'm not ready to say they're Super Bowl contender necessarily. Eagles could do it with Zeke. I believe the Cowboys could do it. But the betting favorite for me is the New Orleans Saints. I just think they didn't really lose anything. You still have one of the best quarterbacks of all time. You have the best receiver in the NFL, in my opinion. You have one of the best head coaches of all time. A good defense. I think it's the Saints.
Tough to argue. Very, very tough to argue.
There you go.
There it is. Those are our NFC predictions. Thank you for joining us. Give us your thoughts and your feedback. Let us know who you think will represent the NFC, and we will have the AFC coming up for you.